What's going on, everyone, and happy Monday. About 73% of stocks in the S&P 500 finished in the green, but to be honest with you, the market was a complete chop fest today, and SPY looked like a pinball going back and forth all day long. And we do see this from time to time ahead of big events, just like we have this week with a crucial interest rate decision, Jerome Powell's speech, and big earnings. So while today was pretty choppy, we do have a pretty exciting week ahead of us. So make sure to stick with us all the way into the end to make sure to be fully prepared for the week. And there was some pretty big news with Tesla today as well. So make sure to stick around for that. And towards the end of the video, we have one of the biggest big money trades that we've had in a while, totaling just under $9 million. So we have a great video today, and let's jump right into it.
Yeah, the market was pretty good today overall, I guess. Like when you look at where it closed up in the green, it did hold its ground pretty good, which was nice, but there wasn't really a lot of price action or a lot of movement throughout the day. There was a pretty good breakdown towards the end of the day, but then you can see the market really recovered right back up there into close. So heading into tomorrow, I'm still going to keep watching that overhead resistance that the SPY put up this morning around 510.50 to 510.75. That's going to be a big spot for tomorrow. And Mike, everybody was looking at Tesla today. That was really the talk of the town. Whenever we go look at Tesla, they were up 15%. It's like, wow, like what's going on here? They had a partnership with Baidu, which is actually a Chinese stock, and they're looking to roll out their FSD over in China, which is full self-driving. So that's going to be huge, Mike, for them to get this going in China. They're going to have access to Baidu's maps, and they're going to actually be able to collect data from over there in China throughout this deal as well. So that's pretty good. And they've actually been making deals with Baidu for a little while, but it's good to see the partnership advance a little bit more even. So let's go. Hey, Tesla's doing good in the short term. It's coming up off of a major dip. I mean, whenever we go out to a daily chart, it was down a lot from those recent highs around like 250 to 290. That was insane how much it started falling. But I'll say this, it's almost halfway back up within like 3 to 4 trading days here.
There we go. And Tom, I'll tell you, it feels a little bit weird talking about Tesla like this because it has been quite a while since it's had a green day like this one. But either way, it's nice to see this type of price action, and Tesla's had a pretty brutal year so far. So hopefully this news can turn it around.
Yeah, I hope it keeps going. And whenever I look at a chart of Tesla, there's been a huge trend line on this stock on the daily chart for multiple years now. And when I say consistent trend line, this trend line is one of the more consistent ones that I've ever seen. And it's held up for a long time. As Tesla rises here, I'm going to really watch some of these resistances in the short term, like $200, which we'll actually talk about a little later. But I'm also watching that trend line overhead. Like, that's going to be a pretty big spot. It's really failed to get any good momentum above this trend line for like 2 to 3 years. So I'm definitely going to watch that over the next coming weeks and months too.
Sounds great. And then jumping over to the overall market for a second, let's keep in mind that we are in a time of the year that normally isn't all sunshine and rainbows for the market, especially during election years. So by looking at the chart right here, we can see the blue line represents the market for 2024, and the orange line represents what the market normally does during big election years. We can see the period between like April to June tends to be relatively weak, and we've already started to see weakness during this time frame. Looking at historical data, it shows that the market has more room to go down, but that doesn't mean that each year has to replicate exactly what the historical average is. The main thing to take away from data like this is that normally during this time, the market does tend to get a little bit weaker. So just keep that in mind because as we all know, the market has definitely changed over the past couple of weeks compared to the type of market we saw earlier this year. But I thought this chart was interesting, and I figured people would get value from it.
Yeah, these historical data charts sometimes really blow my mind because, like, whenever you look at like a normal year for the market, it's like It's really insane to like see how like those bigger starts to election years really start to fall down here for these couple of months and then come back. It's really interesting to see these charts, and it can definitely be used here for trading. So I'm going to keep that in the back of my mind over the next couple weeks and months while we navigate through a lot of these wild earnings, Mike, because these earnings have been pretty insane lately. And whenever I look at the SPY, like it's starting to recover back up, but we do have that big resistance here overhead around like 510.50 to 510.75, which was like almost like a double or triple top today. It really failed to break out above those levels. So I'll still be watching that into tomorrow, but these earnings here are going to dictate a lot of the price action. And tomorrow we're going to have quite a bit in after hours with Amazon, AMD, Super Microcomputers, or SMCI, Starbucks, and then even in pre-market tomorrow morning, PayPal, LLY, 3M, McDonald's, KO. These are some pretty big companies here.
I'm excited, and this is actually the biggest earnings week of the entire season, so that's pretty exciting as well. But yeah, tomorrow's going to be a pretty big day. Amazon and AMD in after hours, and then, even starting out with PayPal before the market even opens, that'll be pretty interesting.
It will. I thought PayPal had some pretty interesting price action today. And of course, I'm not saying they play earnings, and you really can't at this point, considering that, it's after hours now. But but I'm looking at the stock here. I had a really good close today, holding up pretty high. I'll definitely be watching this one, Mike, as, we go out to the daily chart. It's been starting to really recover up off of these lows, and it might start to really blast above resistance. And there's actually, a lot of traders like to look at gaps to fill on the chart. There is a huge gap to fill where they gap down from earnings. Maybe these earnings will make them gap right into that.
Yeah, and then PayPal is one of those stocks that is still trading at like a relatively cheap valuation. It's one of those stocks that has fallen out of the sky from like the COVID years. And while many other stocks and industries have recovered quite a bit from their lows, PayPal is still pretty close to their lows, which was made back in like October of 2023. So it's up a decent amount from its lows, but it still has a lot of work to do. But with all earnings reports, while we're in peak earnings season, remember there's a lot of opportunity to ride the move after the report as well. You don't have to gamble ahead of earnings. There's a lot of opportunity riding the momentum after, and I think that has been especially proven this earnings season. And we covered this a couple weeks ago, but UAL was a prime example of that one from their earnings report on the 17th. It had a big move up initially, but then it continued to rise up for days after the fact.
It really did, and even Tesla here in the short term is kind of making a pretty good move up as well, following their earnings. I know they might have got a little bit lucky with the Baidu news, but at the end of the day, they're still getting it done and moving up following those earnings. And even some of the other ones like Netflix to the downside has been pretty good over the past couple days and weeks too, following those earnings. So I'm definitely still watching these tonight, Mike, and tomorrow definitely keep your eyes on Amazon, AMD, and SMCI in after hours. Those are going to be the bigger, like, market-moving players, even though PayPal is, like, one of my most interesting stocks tomorrow, right? Amazon, AMD, SMCI, you almost can't beat those. And going back to the heat map from today, Mike, a lot of these tech stocks actually were down today, but the market was chopping around. But you guys can see how much these tech stocks impact the market with the size of their boxes, like Amazon here.
No doubt. And I think when you look at the market, it's worth noting that we didn't really see too much momentum today. And that is somewhat common to see when you have like giant earnings, a Powell speech, and an interest rate decision ahead, because, a lot of investors don't want to get too ahead of themselves when there's such big events scheduled for later in the week. So this Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time is when we have the next interest rate decision. It's expected to just be a pause in interest rates. And then 30 minutes after that, at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, that is when the big man, Jerome Powell, comes out with this speech. But either way, we have a very big week ahead of us. And don't forget about these events, because it's going to get pretty crazy pretty quickly.
It really will, and Powell's going to dictate a lot of that price action. I will have it live on the Stocked Up Live YouTube channel, so definitely join us 15 minutes before that interest rate decision. So that will be at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday. Make sure to be there, but it's going to be a fun event, Mike. Everybody watches Powell in the market lately, and I'm really curious what he has to say for the future, because my big thing is, like, what are they looking at for rate cuts down the road? Like, we already know they're going to pause now. It's like when are they going to finally start cutting? cutting, though.
But can you trust his word, though?
Probably not.
So, yeah. All right. Well, good stuff. And let's get right into some setups for tomorrow. A stock I'm watching pretty closely is ZM, and it's to the upside. I talked about this one in yesterday's video, and it had a nice move higher, but I think it still has more room to go. It is very close to a crucial support level, right around like $60 a share. There's no hype with it at all, which is not the best thing in terms of a short-term trade, because you need some momentum to have like a meaningful move. But what it can make for is like a really nice risk profile for a trade that might be held over the course of a couple days or a couple weeks. And when I say that, more specifically, what I mean is right now the stock's at like $63 a share. You might put a stop loss down to like $59 a share, and your profit target might be to that like $72 to $76 range. There's just like a nice risk reward in the short term, and if you're willing to hold it longer, you could even get more aggressive with it. But I think it's at a pretty solid level right now.
I really do too, Mike. I like Zoom a lot in the short term as well, and I really like that risk-reward profile that it presents in the short term. I'm actually waiting for a bit of a dip, and then I'm looking to grab a swing on it and, as well personally. But going into my first play, I'm looking at Boeing to the upside. They had some news this morning. They're starting to pop off pretty well on that, and they're running up. If they can break 173.85 tomorrow, I will continue to look for more good momentum. If we go out to the daily chart, Boeing's been getting crushed, right? They've had a lot of bad news. We all know about their problems. We've been talking about it quite a bit lately. So I'm really just watching for a short-term pop back up. I don't think that this is something where you necessarily need to run into shares or anything like that yet, unless you really like Boeing at this level and this valuation. But I think it's more of a short-term play to the upside just off of this news.
All right, sounds good. Another stock I'm watching pretty closely is Fiverr, FVRR. I also talked about this one recently. Upwork does have earnings pretty soon, which can definitely move this one in a big way as well. But the Fiverr setup is pretty similar to the Zoom setup I talked about, where it's at like a pretty big support level. And with Fiverr specifically, a stop loss can be set right around like this $18 and like 70-cent area, with profit targets all the way up to 24 to like 27, depending with how aggressive you want to get with it. But I definitely like the risk reward in the short term.
Yeah, I do too. I like those supports on these stocks, Mike. They're looking pretty good coming up off of these recent dips. So I'll definitely keep my eyes on Fiverr as well as Zoom. With my next play, I'm looking at Tesla. And I said that we'd come back to this one and look at that key $200 area, because it almost got there today. It was only like $1 off if we go to like the 5-minute chart. But the reason I wanted to show this is this level, $200, everybody knows it's a big level, but I want to show you guys why. We can use Bookmap and actually see the amount of shares that are stacked up at $200. At the end of the day today, there was 646,000 shares. I would expect those to come back in tomorrow, and even if it's not that number, it'll still be really high. So I'm watching 200 as a major resistance in the short term with Tesla. If we could see a good push above there, we might start to see another good breakout. And judging by that price action today, as we know, Tesla, whenever it starts to get that hype, it starts to really snowball and starts to get a little bit euphoric. I'm wondering if in the short term, there's going to be a big influx of buyers. So I'll be watching Tesla very closely around this $200 level over the next couple days. And
$200 is a very big psychological level as well. And I think Bookmap demonstrates that very clearly. There's a lot of sellers lined up there. And whenever you have big psychological levels, whether it be $200 or $100 or $150 or anything like that, you have like clusters of orders that just pool around those levels is a historically significant part for or level for the stock. And the same thing applies to almost every stock out there, because when people go to submit buy and sell orders, it's a lot easier to say, hey, I'll sell my shares once it gets to $200 rather than something else, right? Just like an easy number that comes to mind with people. And again, Bookmap shows that pretty obviously as the orders are already queued up at the level. But either way, keep a close eye on Tesla going forward. And Tom, let's jump right into the momentum plays for today. And with the first one, we have NEM to the upside.
Yeah, NEM pulled back at open today and then started really recovering up in the middle of the day today. I'm going to watch for a breakout above the short-term resistance at $43. There's been multiple bounces right around there the past couple days, so if we could break above there, then IUP calls.
All right, with the next one, we have Meta to the downside, which was one of the big tech stocks that didn't do too hot today.
It really didn't, down 2.41%. You can see that big move with earnings from last week. That was a pretty bad drop there. And there's another support coming up around 427. So if we break under there, then IUP puts.
All right, and then with the last one, we have Netflix for both directions.
NFLX, pretty wild today. Choppy like the market, but closed pretty well. If it breaks above 560 tomorrow and we see some good momentum, then IUP calls. It's right around the highs of after hours. If it ends up breaking under the 553 support, then IUP puts. And we should see some pretty good moves, at least in after hours tomorrow, considering all the tech stocks reporting.
There we go. All right, well, so we have the downside level for Netflix, and then we have the upside level as well. Don't forget about the downside level with Meta, and then the upside level with NEM. These three stocks are on watch for potential day trades tomorrow if and only if they break through the levels Tom listed. We are looking for strong, powerful, consistent price action and breakouts through the levels Tom listed, and then continuations in those directions. So keep a close eye on these three stocks. And Tom, let's jump right into today's $8.8 million big money trade of the day. And we are looking at ticker symbol FXI. So specifically, the big money put $8.8 million into the FXI 28 strike calls that expire on December 20th of 2024. For those of you who don't know, FXI is an ETF of a bunch of Chinese stocks. There have been a handful of big money plays lately. BABA and BILI are a couple of them, just to name a few. But there's been a lot of bullish flows involved with the Chinese stocks lately, and for multiple reasons. The Chinese stocks have taken quite the hit over the past couple of years, and for good reason to a certain extent, but they are now to the point where those who are bearish on China stocks have already shorted, and those who have been holding Chinese stocks and would have considered selling have definitely sold by now. So it has definitely presented an interesting risk to reward skew, especially in the short term. Plus, the Chinese government is doing quite a few things to prop up their markets, and that has been working at least in the short term. And China stocks have been running in a pretty nice way. Looking at FXI, I can definitely see this one continuing higher throughout the rest of the year, but a trade like this big money one should only be followed if you're willing to give it the time it needs. These call options expire in December. So like if you're someone who's looking to trade FXI to the upside tomorrow, that is a completely different trade than what the big money is taking. So there's opportunity with this big money trade, but you have to give it the time it needs. I think people don't give the big money plays the right amount of time. So keep that in mind, and I'm very excited to see how this one does.
Yeah, and in the short term, there is a lot of good momentum on FXI. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if people wanted to play it short term, but just realize it's not the same type of setup as what we're seeing with the big money. We've seen a few big money plays on FXI over the course of this year, and the most notable one going back to February 5th, Mike. Like, if we go back to that one, it's pretty insane how low this is. I think it's like the exact bottom. Obviously, we're not at like the exact bottom right now, but I'm going to draw an arrow here to where they entered on February 5th. Like, that is a pretty good entry down there at the bottom. So I'm definitely going to watch FXI too, Mike. It's a pretty interesting stock in the short term, considering it comprises multiple of the China stocks. And it's good to see Baidu have the news with Tesla. You know, that was some good news today as well. Baidu starting to move. Baba's doing pretty good on a daily chart. I know it's not necessarily like up a ton today, but in the short term, these stocks have been moving very well off of lows.
Yeah, with everything being said, we have a very exciting week ahead of us. We have a Jerome Powell speech, a crucial interest rate decision, and a whole bunch of pretty big earnings on the schedule. Looking at the earnings calendar, it's super easy to get tempted to take a YOLO gamble on an earnings report, but what I think would be the smartest move this week, instead of doing that, is educating yourself on the root concepts behind how some of these stocks move based off of their fundamentals. The Stocked Up Deep Value Club is one of our, I guess you could say, most affordable products, and I have not seen one person who joined this say that they haven't learned quite a bit. So check it out. It's going to be that first link in the description in the comments down below. We don't really talk about this too much, but it's definitely one of the most underrated services that we have. Basically, you can get text alerts, email alerts, and see all of the real reasons why stocks move over long periods of time. And I think it's almost impossible for you not to learn something in this club. It's awesome. Check it out. It'll be that first link in the description in the comments down below. Last but not least, I want to give a giant shout out to today's Discord member of the day, G. Scott. He made an amazing post in the testimonials channel this weekend. So thank you so much for all the kind words and keep on rolling. But with everything being said, guys, we have a very exciting week ahead of us. So let's make this week a great one.